table. Dan Becker is sitting up there as both Michelle Bear and Dan Becker.
Oh, boy.
And Naja Batish is a member of the Zoning Hearing Board. Robert Ulbrich, Robert.
I can be Robert Ulbrich.
Not Ulbrich, no. And I'm David Rothwell, I'm the chairman of the board. Mr. Becker is going to
Yes, I'll go through and kind of explain the hearing today. It's going to be a little different from what we normally do because Michelle had an emergency, so she's unable to attend the hearing today. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to first run through the process and procedure for today's hearing. Then I'm going to go through the board exhibits, and we're going to talk about that. So today, the way the hearing works is the applicant, Ms. Bayshore, has the burden of proof to establish why the relief she's requesting should be granted. You can do that by providing testimony and exhibits, and I see you're represented by competent counsel with Mark Cuck here to your right, and I see you have another witness who I believe will be providing testimony today. All right, so you'll have the opportunity to present all of that evidence. You can do testimony and documents, and as they're going through those different people, the board members and I, and also have an opportunity for the residents who are here to ask questions. After you have completed all of your testimony and evidence, the members here that are in the public will have the opportunity to do the same. We're going to go through in a moment to see whether or not anybody is requesting stand. After all of the testimony has been presented, the board will deliberate in an executive session and will typically render an oral decision the same day. Okay? We will then follow that up within 45 days with a written decision. Then from there, there's certain rights that will spring for you and or the neighbors depending on the results of that decision. Do you have any questions about where we're going with the process for the hearing?
No, Mr. Becker.
About to the residents. Any questions from the residents? Okay, I see none. Now let's talk just for a short moment about standing. So for standing, what that means is if you elect to have standing, that means you have the right to present testimony and exhibits, and you have the right to appeal the decision if you don't like the decision, you get notices of those things. In order to do that, you have to be able to establish that you have an adverse, direct, immediate, and substantial impact on this particular matter as on your property review. If you're just here to listen, that's quite all right. If you're just here where you want to make a statement at the end of it all, so that the board understands your position, you can do that too, and you don't have to request standing. That's up to you. I see that there's 3 residents that I believe that are here. I know there's a gentleman that is videotaping. He indicated that he's just here to videotape. He is not looking for any participation, but just standing. Is that
Yes,
correct?
but I am resident.
Thank you very much. All right, so let's start just going around the room. We'll start over here. Would you like to have, please state your name for the record.
Janet Barnett, 1238 Cleveland.
And Ms. Barnett, would you like to request standing, or are you just here to present a statement at the end?
I'd like to stand.
Okay. Tuck, you have any objection to Ms. Barnett's statement? Thank you very much. Okay. Next, sir.
Jeremy Frimeware, 1226 Cleveland. I would like to request it.
Okay. Mr. Tuck, any objection?
I'm sorry, I didn't get your last name.
Frimeware, Freymoyer.
That's Jeremy.
Correct.
The only point I'd like to clarify, Mr. Becker, is that Mr. Frymore is perhaps a member of an entity that owns that property.
That is correct.
So
Okay.
I don't think he technically has standing if the LLC.
So
whoever it may be.
can you explain to us what that entity is?
It's a LLC, JPF Property Group,
And what's your position?
president.
And has JPF Property Group authorized you? to-
LLC, yes.
Yep. So JPF Property, right?
JPF Property Group LLC.
And they've authorized you to be here today?
I am JPF Property Group.
You are JPF Property, got it. Okay, and Mr. Cook, do you have any objections to standing for JPF Property Group
No objection, Mr. Becker.
with Mr. Fryer?
No objection.
Okay, thank you. And ma'am, your name?
Gail Frymore,
Ms. Frymore, what's your address?
1241 Dolphin Avenue.
Okay, and are you requesting standing or are you?
Yes.
Okay, so Mr. Peck, do you have any objections?
I'm not sure exactly where that location is. How close is that to the subject property?
Oh, I would block them in.
3 houses.
No objection, Mr. Chairman.
My house next block.
No objection.
Okay, so great. So then we have 3 people here who have been granted standing, and so we will proceed in that manner. So again, what will happen, just the applicant will go first. They have the obligation and it's the responsibility to be able to establish the hardship to create the relief that they're requesting, right? After they're done, we'll come to the folks as well. Before we begin then with any testimony, we're going to go a little bit out of order like we normally would do because Michelle's not here. I'm going to run through these exhibits, and then I'm going to go back up and sit up in the front with the board members. So I'm going to take them one at a time here in order. And before we do that, what I'd like to do is have our code officials sworn. So if you just raise your right hand.
He's just here, Shannon. Yep.
Do you swear the testimony you're about to give to be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Okay, sir, what is your first name
Jeff
and your last name?
Hogue, H-O-G-G.
And what's your position?
I am the zoning officer for Wyomissing.
I'm going to go through a number of documents here. At some point, I may be requesting your input on those documents.
Sure.
All right, so for board exhibit number 1, we're going to mark what's a letter that is dated May 15th, 2024. Mr. Hogue, are you familiar with that particular letter or memorandum?
I am, yes.
And what is that?
This is my memo drafted to the zoning hearing board detailing my review of the application.
And a copy that was provided to the applicant?
That's correct.
All right, so that's going to be board exhibit number 1. Board exhibit number 2 is going to be the notice of application, notice of the variance application. Mr. Hogue, did you have any part in preparing that?
I did not.
Okay, so what I will represent is that this is a copy of the notice for the hearing. This is the notice that was placed in the newspaper, and this is the notice that was posted at the property. We'll mark that as board exhibit number 2. Board exhibit number 3 will be a copy of the affidavit of, I'm sure I got this one right, this is posting, that it was posted on the property on May 3rd, 2024 at 8:30 a.m. by Jim Babb. Board exhibit number 4 is a copy of an affidavit of mailing that was signed by Michelle Baer, that on May 2nd, 2024 at 9 a.m. she issued that notice to the list of property owners, which you can see on the screen, that was sent out to all those adjoining property owners. Exhibit number 5 is a copy of an email from the Reading Eagle that shows the notice that was placed in the newspaper and indicates that the advertisement was placed in the Reading Eagle on May 22nd and May 29th, and published on those days. Exhibit number 6 is a copy of the application that was filed by the applicant. Exhibit number 7 is a letter dated February 23rd, 2024. It's entitled Notice of Violation. Jeff, were you involved with the issuance of this letter?
I was, yes.
Okay, can you explain what that letter is?
This is a notice of violation citing the Uniform Construction Code. The property constructed a deck without a permit, and this notice is notifying that they would require a permit in order to do so.
Okay, I'm going to show you next what's marked exhibit number, I believe we're at 8. And it's again another notice that's dated February 23rd, 2024. Mr. Hogue, were you involved with the issuance of that letter?
I was, yes.
And what is that letter?
This is a notice of violation citing the zoning ordinance requiring permits for construction of the deck and for the carport as well.
Okay, and we will then go to the next exhibit, and this is 2 photographs. Mr. Hogue, are you familiar with these photographs?
I am, yes.
And what do they depict?
These are photographs that were taken on February 21st, I believe, that depict the deck and carport of the property.
And were these photographs sent with the letters that went out that we just looked at?
They were included as exhibits for both NOVs, yes.
Okay. And
Maybe
then,
part of B8 then?
I don't know which one they, so we did them as two marks, so I'm gonna mark them as separate exhibits.
Okay.
I'm gonna mark that as, I think I did already as, I think that was 8, correct? I think we're at exhibit number 9 right now. So exhibit number 9, are you familiar with this letter, Mr. Hook?
I am, yes.
And what is exhibit number 9?
This is a permit denial letter once receiving permit applications for the deck and carport. They were unable to be approved due to the items that we are here for today, and therefore we had sent a permit denial letter citing the specific sections of the zoning ordinance that they are unable to comply with.
Okay, so what we'll do is we've marked all of those exhibits, make sure I got my numbers right. If it's not, we'll adjust them for the record, 1 through whatever it comes to. I believe it will be 9. Mr. Custer, do you have any objections to any of those exhibits?
No objection, Mr. Becker.
To any of the folks in the audience, Ms. Barnett, do you have any objections?
No, sir.
Thank you very much. Mr. Frymore?
Nope.
Thank you, Ms. Frymore? Thank you very much. Okay, so at this point in time, then, we're gonna proceed with the hearing. Since there are no other electronic exhibits, if we need to reference these, I will pull them back up, but otherwise, I'm gonna go back and sit in my normal seat, just so I can help to give me a better angle and view. of what's going on.
Squeaky too.
That's right. All right. And what we're gonna do, as soon as I get in my seat, what we will do is we'll turn the hearing over to you, Mr. Cuck. We're gonna have your witnesses sworn. In fact, why don't we have all of the folks that are gonna be providing testimony sworn, even whether you do or you don't, we're gonna have everybody sworn at the same time. So we're gonna have your 2 witnesses, Ms. Bayshore,
Christine Bayshore, Gus Katsakis.
Janet Barnett, Jeremy Frymoyer, and Gail Frymoyer sworn all at the same time, okay? So while I'm making that move, if you guys want to just raise your right hand, face the stenographer, and then answer the questions.
Gus Katsakis, Kotsakas.
And your name again, ma'am?
Shanna, J-A-N-A, Barnett, B-A-R-N-E-T-T.
And your position. Name. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes. Okay, Mr. Cuck, you can proceed calling your first witness.
Thank you, Mr. Becker, and if I may, members of the board, good afternoon. Mark Cuck here on behalf of Christine Bayshore. I don't think I formally entered my appearance previously, so just so we'll get that on the record. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very unfortunate circumstance here, and the first thing that I want to do on behalf of my client is apologize for the inconvenience and the nature of how this particular project has proceeded. As you've probably been able to gather from the documentation, the relief was not obtained prior to the construction. And unfortunately, Mr. Katsakis is here to explain as the contractor how that occurred. But I do want to say to the board and to the borough itself that we do apologize for the inconvenience and for how this particular situation progressed. We think we'll be able to explain to you how and why it progressed and how we got to where we are. But very simply, this board has seen a lot of relief over the years, and it comes down to a dimensional request for relief after the fact. So please make no mistake, the deck has been constructed, the carport has been constructed. Those improvements were basically completed in the fall of last year. Mr. Hogue issued a notice of violation in February, and just to give you the background, we immediately then went in and applied for permits at that point in time, and the permit denial was issued because it turns out that there is a building coverage issue and there is a side yard setback issue. Very simply, those are the reasons we're here to talk to you today and hopefully to present our case and explain how we ended up in this situation. Ms. Bayshore I'm going to refer to as Chris. Mr. Katsakis I'm going to refer to as Gus, but we basically have 2 witnesses, property owner, contractor. We're going to walk through how we got to where we are. Again, this is a request for dimensional relief. This isn't a use variance. It's an existing residence, and we'll get into a little bit of argument at the end of the proceeding, but that's where we are to start. So with that, Chris, you've been sworn, are you a resident of 1224 Cleveland Ave?
I am.
And can you tell the board just a little bit about yourself, please?
I've been a resident of Berks County all my life. I went to Conner Zero High School. I've worked at Care and Treatment Centers for the last 23 years as the chief operating officer. I have made a very specific decision to downsize from Sinking Spring and move into the borough of Wyomissing. I wanted to be in Wyomissing, I want to be in Wyomissing. Love the neighborhood, the park system and all the rest. My desire here really was to make the property in the back really more match the work that had already been done before I bought it inside the house from usability and beautification perspective. And so that was really what led to the work that I contracted to get done.
All right, so with a brief pause, if I may, Mr. Becker, your preference on marking exhibits A1, which is...
Yeah, why don't we mark those as applicants, A1 through whatever it is. Are you gonna pre-mark all of them now, Mark, or are you gonna go through?
we can do Chris's to start. We can do A1, and I have a couple of pictures for the board. So that would be A1 and A2.
What is A1?
A1 is the deed to the property, Mr. Becker.
Okay. A2 are photographs?
A2 are photographs consisting of 3 different photographs of the rear of the property. I guess Michelle's in who does this, doesn't she?
She often will have them in advance, that's all.
You would want these collectively as A2.
So it'll be, we can mark 1 as A2, and it's all the same thing. So it's
Oh,
three
oh,
pictures,
oh,
1
sure.
A2.
I'm gonna mark it on the back.
And Mr. Becker, do you keep the originals or?
Yeah, well, so I'll probably leave them with the stenographer ultimately, but for right now, if we can have the originals down here to look at.
Now, Chris, I just marked and handed to Mr. Becker a copy of your deed. Mr. Becker, we make an offer of proof, obviously, that's Mrs. Bayshore's deed, with respect to the property, to establish standing.
Did you want to make sure you show, yeah, I was gonna say, thank you, Mark, make sure you're showing this.
Yep. So Chris, obviously you're the owner of the property, you acquired the property. You already just touched on a little bit about the fact that as you came to look at the property, you looked at the rear of the property, because that's really the focus, right? And so you decided that you were looking to make some improvements back there. What did you do? Did you hire a contractor?
I did, I hired Gus out of Mega Builders. This was the first time I've undergone renovations of a property. Gus came to me highly recommended, as did obviously his business on Mega Builders.
And so the board knows exactly what we're talking about. I just handed everybody a copy of what we have marked for identification as Exhibit A2, and that is a series of 3 different pictures. The first page of Exhibit A2 is that the deck that you constructed.
Yes,
The second page, does that depict the carport that was constructed?
correct.
And then the third page, does that also show another view of the carport from the alley to the rear of the property?
Yes, it does.
Now, Omega came highly recommended to you, is that right?
Correct.
You started through the process, and again, I think you mentioned this was your first renovation solo, is that right?
Correct. Correct.
And so, who resides at the property?
Myself and my daughter.
So, we've walked through the fact that you're now the record owner of the property, you've acquired it in the spring of '23, and desire to make some improvements. So, you go through the process of engaging the contractor, and just a little bit about the property. I believe this information is in Mr. Hoag's analysis, but the lot in question is about 3,049 square feet, am I right?
Correct.
And so, if you had an occasion to look at the surrounding lots in the area, is it one of the smallest lots in the neighborhood?
Absolutely.
Do you happen to recall in Mr. Hoag's correspondence that the minimum lot size in this R1 district is about 12,000 square feet?
Yes.
So this is a significantly smaller lot than typically what is required, is that fair?
Yes.
So you settle on the property and you and Gus start to work through a list of work, is that fair?
Mm-hmm.
When you get to Omega and you start to do some interior renovations, is that fair?
Yes.
Now, the condition of the property when you acquired it, had it already been renovated?
It had been largely renovated, yes.
And so there were a couple of, and in your word, tweaks or revisions that you were looking to make it a little more comfortable inside.
Yes,
One of the things was putting new tile in the shower.
yes.
I think you moved around some of the bedroom doors and the closet doors.
We expanded the closet situation, and to do so, we moved a doorway, yes.
In the master bedroom, I think you put a closet in there as
Yes.
well. In the kitchen, what'd you do in the kitchen?
The kitchen had already been renovated, but we moved the refrigerator to make space for a small table, so I'd have a need-in kitchen area.
So the interior renovations are some minor things that you basically wanted to personalize the residence.
Yes,
Fair?
correct.
In that context, then you also decided that you wanted to do some exterior work, is that right? And so the pictures that we've already handed to the board depict the deck and the carport that you wanted installed.
Yes.
You worked your way through some of those discussions with Gus, is that right?
Mhm.
You get to the point where you basically finish construction late fall of '23,
Yes,
and everything seems to be okay.
yes.
What happens in February?
So February, I received the letter that has been seen by the board, and I immediately took a picture of that letter and texted Gus and inquired about the content of that letter.
So, to be clear, that letter, I believe, is marked as Exhibit B7. It's a notice of violation.
Yes,
Were you surprised?
very surprised, shocked, upset,
Scared?
scared, scary.
Never seen anything like this before.
No,
To your understanding, you had expected everything was done appropriately and correctly.
correct, yes.
So it turns out that no permits have been issued, is that fair?
Correct,
And when you contacted Gus, did he immediately then submit a permit application?
yes, yes,
So as soon as you got that notice, you attempted to follow the rules, is that right?
yes, absolutely.
That permit application was denied, and is it your understanding it was denied because there were actually variances required from the side yard? Is that right?
Yes,
And also from a building coverage standpoint.
correct,
Did you have any idea any of those items were an issue until this time?
no,
Once the permit application was denied, as Mr. Hoag testified to a little bit earlier, did you then immediately file this application to the zoning hearing board?
yes, Gus and I did.
The modifications, the work that was done to the property, were they important to you?
They were, yeah, I want to be there for the long term, and they were important to make it more usable and to improve the backyard.
When we take a look at some of the pictures Mr. Gus is going to show you, did the backyard, the quality of the backyard match the quality of the front yard or the quality of the house from your standpoint?
No,
So the backyard was lacking in appearance, functionality, aesthetics.
usability, yes, yes.
The improvements that you made, do you believe, in your own personal experience, that they are improvements to the property or detract from the property?
I believe that there are improvements to the property for any other future owner.
Do you believe that the improvements that you made would cause any sort of harm to any of the surrounding property owners?
No,
And do you believe that the improvements that you made would be detrimental in any way to any of the?
no, I would never want to have that be the case, but I do not believe that that was the case.
You want to be a good neighbor.
Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have no further questions for Chris.
So at this time, the board members have any questions for Ms. Bayshore?
No.
To the members of the public who have standing, do you have any questions? This is time for questions, not statements, but if you have any questions for Ms. Bayshore?
I have a couple questions.
Please.
Hi, Chris. Am I correct that the previous resident was Meredith McCluskey?
Yes,
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Am I correct that the previous resident was Meredith McCluskey?
that's my understanding. The house was actually owned by
Her mom,
her
okay.
mother, yes.
Am I correct that the stairwell, which, the stairs to the deck, are beyond the edge of the house? So that it brings your property, you're building closer to the property line than it was before you
Actually-
constructed the deck.
Yeah, actually, there was a deck there prior, and the stairs are almost, I'll let Gus speak to the exact specifics, but the steps are almost in the exact same spot as the prior deck. The deck was lower and smaller, but the steps were positioned very much in a similar position. We do have pictures from, I believe from the MLS, that you can see where the steps in the deck, the prior deck were.
And I personally would like to see that, because I don't know whether you're
Okay, so-
encroaching more on the curb lines.
You can ask your questions, Janet, so ask your questions, and some of those questions may be more appropriate when we have.
I was
Mr.
just
Beck's
saying,
here. But you can ask your questions, you'll have a chance to make a statement then as well.
With regard to the carport, the concrete existed when you bought the property, didn't it?
Correct, it was cracked, but yes, there was a concrete driveway there.
Is this size any different than what it was when you bought the property?
So it's in the basic same footprint. Again, I'll let Gus speak to the exact dimensions.
Just to be clear, Ms. Barnett, I want to make sure that I understand your question. When you're asking about the size, you're asking about the size of is it asphalt or is it?
I thought it was concrete.
It was concrete, it
It
is
was
now
concrete.
asphalt.
I'm
Okay.
just wondering whether, I'm just asking whether the footprint is
I
of
understand,
that.
so essentially, the driveway that's shown on the exhibits that they presented, you're asking if that's the same size as it was before. And I understand your answer to be essentially the same, but you're deferring to.
To Gus for specific dimensions.
thanks.
Mr. Becker, if I may, just to help things along a little bit, I would suggest Gus can speak to all things construction, but I would absolutely, I don't want to prohibit Ms. Barnett from making any comments or questions, so we can offer, she can come back to Mrs. Bayshore
Understand, and she
after.
has, so since she's on the stand, we'll let her test her. She obviously has the right to do that as part of cross-examination, so we'll let her do that as well. But I understand your point, so.
Just trying to make it easier
Yeah,
for
I
everybody.
got you. So, Ms. Barnett, do you have anything further for this witness?
I do not.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Frymore, do you have anything for this witness?
I don't.
Thank you very much. Ms. Frymore, do you have anything for this witness? All right, thank you very much. I believe at this point then, unless the board members have anything as a result of Ms. Barnett's questions, we can move to the next witness. Mr. Beck, please call your next witness. Remember, Mr. Katek is here in Grove.
Sir.
Gus, would you state your full name and your business address for the record, please?
Full name is Konstantin Katsakis, business address is 602 Lambert Circle, Warrersville, PA, 19565.
Gus, okay to refer to you as Gus through this proceeding? Appreciate it. So Gus, you are principal in Omega Builders Inc., is that right?
The president, yes.
And could you give the board just a little bit of your background with Omega Builders?
I've been in the construction business with my dad since I'm 10. He and my uncle owned Olympic Construction years ago. We changed it to Omega Builders when my uncle moved on to something else. My father retired in 2003, and I changed it to Omega Builders Inc., just to kind of start my own thing, and have been doing it ever since. My son is in the business with me. My father is still around. We're well known through all the townships, all the inspection agencies.
So Gus, just kind of cutting straight to the chase, how long have you been doing this? Since you were 10?
Since I'm 10.
So
Yeah.
all forms of contracting, from improvements all the way to full house building, right?
We do full builds. We're licensed plumbers. We do remodeling. We do kitchens, bathrooms. We run full. We're building apartments right now. 54 apartments up in Zoning Ordinance.
So Gus, you were basically contacted by Chris, is that right?
Yes. I don't know if it's Chris or by my realtor who also represented her. And he said, I have a customer. She works up at Karen. She's buying a house. Just waiting to get all of her approvals, and she wants to do a couple modifications. Can you help her out? I said, sure.
So the work that Chris testified to a little bit earlier started out interior, is that right? Interior improvements?
We had priced the interior and the exterior. Chris wanted to think about the exterior for a little bit, and she contracted us to do the interior stuff. The interior stuff was mostly cosmetic. We added closets, we redid some tile, we moved the cabinet in the kitchen. I didn't believe any of those things needed permits. There was nothing structural when we did any of that work. Like I said, it was just 2x4s, drywall, paint, some trim, some shoveling, mostly.
So transitioning then we start to move to the exterior, is that right?
We started to move to the exterior. At the time, I had an estimator in my office who was just on his way out. Because the job was already started and we didn't need permits inside, I transitioned to the outside, and it was an oversight, and I didn't get the permits. I had all intentions of getting the permits. Those things were usually done by my estimator in-house. And it fell through the cracks. We weren't trying to get around anything. We're well known in craft, we're well known in all the inspection agencies. I'd always intended to get the permits. I definitely wouldn't have started anything had I thought that any variance would have been needed. In looking at the surrounding properties, and the improvements that were already next to, behind, or down the alley, we weren't doing anything different than what's already there. So had I thought for a split second that there needed to be a variance, I wouldn't have done anything. I would have come straight to craft and started that process. We removed a deck that was there and a set of stairs. We put the stairs back in the exact same spot. We actually removed a bench which hung out an extra 30 inches from where it is now and hung over the property line, in my opinion. That's no longer there, we took that away. The steps that were reconstructed are reconstructed back in the same place. The deck itself starts at the east side of the house, and it did start at the east side of the house, and we started there again, and we came over. It was 6 by 10, it's now 12 by 16.
So now would be a good time to hand out the plan. I mean, I know you're already starting to work through your testimony. I think the pictures are 1,000 words, and I'll take care of it for you.
There's 8 here.
So we'll do this as Exhibit A3. And I guess the question is, so Mr. Becker, if I may,
How many photographs are there, Mr. Beck?
it's kind of an entire package.
There's
Let's
7
mark them.
photographs.
So we're gonna be going back and forth between those, so let's mark those exhibits A3, and then just kind of A3, 1, 2, 3, 4, however many you have, so that we can refer to those. All right.
There's a narrative, Mr. Becker, and there's also 7 pictures, and there's also a large layout of everything that's in the back, existing and old.
Let me take a look at it.
I just wanted to make sure you're comfortable.
Yeah, so why don't we do the narrative then as
A3.
A3? So if you wanna hand that to the stenographers, you can mark that.
We'll do the pictures as A4.
And there's how many pictures?
Just 7. They're all numbered.
Alright, so we'll mark them as A4, 1 through 7. So A4 hyphen 1, A4 hyphen 2.
You want to do A through G?
Well, we can, they already have the numbers on there, that's why I just did
Oh,
it that way.
oh, right,
Yeah.
so, okay, so,
Yeah.
A
The last
seven,
item is this
one.
one.
And then we'll mark A5 as the hand-drawn plan.
So this will be,
This is A4,
that should be A4. That's okay.
and this is A5.
That is A5. Just want to make sure we're all clear so everybody knows what we're looking at. Alright, so Gus, we're going to keep these originals down here just for the moment.
Okay.
Let's go back there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alright, so give everybody a minute to take a look at a package that was prepared by Gus. The package consists of basically 3 exhibits. And just so the record's clear, A3 is a narrative of work that was performed. It's a 1-page document. Exhibit A4 consists of 7 pictures. So it'd be A4, 1 through 7. And then Exhibit A5, ladies and gentlemen, will be an 11 by 17 hand-drawn plan that Gus will be referring to in his testimony. So, Gus, I just want to back you up a step. I mean, you talked about how we got to where we are, right? And the fact is you were transitioning from interior work to exterior work. Would there be any reason from Omega Builder's standpoint for you not to get permits and not to proceed in the normal course, knowing the municipality and knowing the code reviewers that you deal with all the time?
Absolutely. I know all the principals at Craft. We have a great working relationship. Again, because it was an ongoing job, it just fell through the cracks. We transitioned into something that needed permits from something that didn't, and it was just an ongoing job, so we just kept moving. We had every intention of getting the permits. We didn't do anything, if we ever get to the inspection stage, we didn't do anything that's not up to code. Everything meets codes and will pass our inspection.
And that's a good point, right? I mean, obviously, you've offered, and Chris has offered, if we get to the point of inspections, that's obviously not something that's an issue. Any inspections can be done, it's not a problem, is that right? Correct. So, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to kind of start, Gus, if you can, with Exhibit A5, working backwards a little bit, but this is a hand-drawn plan. And so, Gus, if you take a look at this, the top of the plan is the house. And I believe that would be north, is that fair?
Yeah, I believe that that's facing Penn Avenue, so I believe that would be north of my mind.
So the alley to the rear, or to the bottom, is south. The right-hand side of the plan is east, and the left-hand side of the plan is west. Fair?
As Penn Avenue runs in my mind, yes.
Okay. So one of the first questions Ms. Barnett asked was, as you start to work yourself out of the house, and we'll go clockwise from the top right-hand corner, I'd just like you to explain what we're looking at, because there's a lot here. You see the house, you come out of the house, you travel to the east, and then you come down some stairs. Is that fair?
Correct, yeah. If you look at Exhibit 841, that shows the old stairs, and it shows also the new stairs.
So to be clear, at the top of A1, it's 2 pictures,
Correct,
right?
841.
A41, top picture is pre-construction,
Correct.
and so that's what the house looked like on the MLS listings before Chris bought it.
That's where we got these pictures from, the MLS.
I'd like the board to take notice of the fact that there's an existing deck and an existing staircase, and that's what you're talking about, right?
The stairs are exactly the same in the lower picture as there are in the upper picture. That stairs is, the left railing that you're looking at going up from this view is even with the eastmost part of the house. So those stairs were already there. And those stairs are over top of a set of concrete steps that were there even before that. And there's a picture that shows that as well. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to slow you
No,
down,
go
but
ahead,
I
go
want to
ahead.
make sure we're walking through this in
Yeah.
a way that the stenographer can get it, but also so the board understands. Gus, the top picture on the right-hand side of the staircase, there's, what's sitting there?
On the right-hand side of the staircase, there's a bench which was built on a 45-degree angle. You can see that one board shooting up on an angle towards the property on the right. That actually overhung by about 30 inches out further than what the stairs were and are.
So Gus, when you take a look at A5, you have that depicted on the corner of A5.
Top right corner, you can see I did that in green. There was a 30-inch bench seat there, and that hung out. Like I said, it has that angular piece of wood, which is what supported it, because obviously they didn't want to put, I guess, the support down over the line, so they built it out over the line through the air, I guess I'm gonna say. But that is now gone.
It's the setback on the east side of the house from the edge of the staircase. You have shown as 2 feet on Exhibit A5, is that right?
Correct.
Now, one of the questions Ms. Barnett raised was that the staircase, and I'll ask you this, was the staircase essentially reconstructed in the same place the prior staircase had been.
Same thing, just up higher because the level of the deck was lifted.
So, while we're talking about the staircase and that, you wanna jump to exhibit A42, what does that show you?
So A42 shows the concrete steps that are under the wooden steps. And those were there under the old set of steps as well. And the deck was constructed on top of that concrete where you see there's like that thing you put, it's like a,
Storage.
yeah, storage, thank you. Storage bin under the steps there, where you store whatever. But this old deck was constructed over top of that concrete patio that you see under the storage bin.
So, oddly, the construction here that you were confronted with was already something on top of something else. Is that how you explained it to me?
Yeah, you can see the 4x4 on the picture on the left in A42. You can see the 4x4 sits down on the concrete step. And that's how the old set of steps was constructed as well. So we didn't increase the width of those steps in any way. We did, however, remove that bench, which kind of extended out over towards the property.
So that's an important point. Removing that bench actually removed an encroachment and/or brought the setback back to 2 feet, is that right?
Yes.
As you start to work your way down the stairs, then there's a new deck constructed, all right?
Yeah, there's a new deck constructed. As you come down the steps, you land on brick pavers. And those brick pavers were and are existing. They came over, which you can see at the bottom of the picture of A41, exhibit A41. Those brick pavers were there and are still there.
So we didn't remove those.
Did not remove those. I did take it apart so I could dig down and put a footer in for those posts that I have to be down below frost line. Our new deck extends past the brick pavers by 4 feet. It's 4x12 that's out further than what the brick pavers were. So,
And is that deck 12 by 16?
that deck is 12x16.
And that's about 192 square feet?
Yeah.
What would you like to point out with respect to the deck and what you were thinking about the construction?
In my mind, and in my drawing from my experience, I didn't think that we were increasing any kind of impervious because the brick pavers were already there. And the deck itself is not solid. And it only extends by 4x12 is what it extends past those brick pavers. It's not impervious like concrete or macadam or something like that, like a roof. The water can still get through it, so I didn't think that was gonna be an issue when we went to get the permits.
The net difference between the paver area there and the deck. So when you constructed the deck, how much additional impervious coverage did you add there?
If the deck is indeed impervious, it's 4x12, it's 48 square feet.
So additionally, in your mind,
In my mind,
as you were looking at this construction and considering what was going on,
yes.
the area of the deck that isn't over top of the existing pavers is again, how much? About
4x12.
So about 48 square feet. Right. But again, the entire deck is 192 square feet.
Correct.
Now, understanding that the notice of violation and the zoning issues that were raised by Mr. Hoag are building coverage issues, right? We recognize that there are paving coverages as well. But again, in your mind, that's how you were thinking, is that impervious is total as opposed to separated between building and actual paving. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, as I looked at the existing concrete patio that was underneath the wood patio and the stairs that were already there, which we just mimicked, the deck itself, again, in my mind, was only 4x12 out over what was not brick pavers.
While we're still talking about that particular area, there's also a setback issue raised by Mr. Hoag, is that right?
Yes.
So his letter indicates that the building, so the house, is set back 5 feet 8 inches from the side yard in that particular location, is that your understanding?
From the letter, yes.
And based on your experience and what is out there, was it in fact only a 2-foot setback to the edge of the staircase and everything else?
To the end of the stairs, yes, which, I mean, this picture shows that that's where they were and that's where they are. So, yeah, we didn't change anything on that side of the house except for removing that bench.
The staircase that had been there, that you replaced, was that up to code or not?
I don't think so. We ripped it out. I don't think it was, no, not with the railing the way it is, not with the treads the way they were. I'm not gonna say I measured the treads or the rise to see if they met the code, because I didn't do that.
Final point with respect to that area of the house, the removal of the 30-inch bench, did that in your experience make the side yard more conforming or less conforming?
It definitely put us back over to our side and against the stairs that were already existing without that extra protrusion. Yeah, absolutely.
So let's start to work our way then to the rear of the property. And you can see, you want to take a look at the plan or the exhibits next. Why don't we go to A4-3, please? And this is a view from the alley, now looking to the north, is that right?
Correct.
And the top picture on A3, what does that depict?
The top picture shows the concrete driveway, which came off of the rear alleyway.
And then you can see all the way up to the deck that was replaced as well, right?
Correct.
The bottom half of A3 then shows what you replaced, where where the concrete was removed, is that right?
Yeah, if you look at where there's a concrete skirt or concrete apron that adjoins to the alleyway, the width of that was 14.6 of the existing concrete driveway,
And that's shown on Exhibit A5, right? That dimension.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, that's shown at the bottom, right above where it says rear alleyway. It shows the existing concrete apron, which we left. That was the only thing that wasn't broken, as you can see from the picture. That was the only thing that wasn't broken up. The other thing I kind of want to mention is, as you look at the picture at the top of A43, and you get to the top of the broken concrete sections, there was an apex that was right there, and when you got up to that point, it then went grade the wrong way, and that collected water in there, and that was kind of where the car was supposed to be parked. So
Gus, can you see that pretty much right at the end of the bush?
I can see it because I know it was there. I want to make sure everybody else can see it. Yeah, it's at the end of the bush. It was kind of straight across the bottom step on the left, or bottom walkway, left walkway of the brick there.
So as you came up the driveway, you hit a point that was the highest point of the driveway, and then as you crested that into, let's call it the parking area, for lack of a better word, it actually went down.
It went the opposite way. Yeah, there, in between the landscaping logs that you see when you get up near the top there, that was the parking area. And that, like I said, it came up and then it went, actually pitched back down. So when it rained, it collected water. So when we removed that, we lowered the ground as well to create one single plane from the planting strip that you see, or the planter that you see, the concrete planter. It's just a single plane now all the way down the alleyway, and it doesn't hold water anymore.
So as we take a look at Exhibit A5, you have a couple of different boxes there, for lack of a better word. Let's start with the red box. You have that drawn in red. Was that we'll explain what that was, please.
Yeah, the red, everything, the red ink down below is the existing concrete driveway and parking area. We took out the steps, which you can see, if you can see in the top picture. Actually, if you go back to A41, you can see what the railing was on those steps. It was just a pipe. But we removed those steps, and we also removed that brick walkway that came down alongside there. And we regraded that a little bit. We made it wider by 1 foot, which was what I think you were asking earlier. So instead of 14.6, it's now 15.6 as far as paved area.
Remove the concrete, install the cap.
Install the cabin, yeah, in one plane as opposed to the two pitches. It is 15.6 wide now instead of the 14.6. And then the carport itself is 18 by 18. So again, in my mind, as I work through it,
Just explain if you would,
Right.
so the 18 by 18 is the yellow,
18 by 18 is the yellow with the pylons underneath on both sides, with the sonotubes on either side of the supports.
I'm sorry, with,
Pylons,
underneath with
sonotubes.
spell it.
sonotubes.
Yeah, sonotubes, sonotubes. Sorry.
So we talked about the red being the previous, the prior existing.
Mr. Guthrie, can you just give us a few seconds?
Sure. You want it off the record, or
Yeah, we'll go off the record.
Sure.
In fact,
want to take 5?
yeah, I think I want to take 5 minutes, a quick executive session.
No problem. Would you like us to leave?
Yes, please.
Is it okay to leave everything here?
It is, but the camera's not together. Which we resolved. One of the things that the timing is getting later in the day. We still are on our second witness. We have members of the public who also may be calling witnesses. So we're asking that we try to move this forward expeditiously and try to get to the meat of the issues at hand. So at this point, I believe where we were, and I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I want to continue on with, I think, the direct testimony of Gus. So Mark, if you want to proceed with, oh, by the way, this may also make from the record, is we're looking at trying to wrap this up to the extent we can at 4:30. If ultimately, if we're not able to get through all this information, we end up continuing the hearing to another date.
So perhaps, Mr. Becker, maybe it makes sense to make an offer of proof of some sort to help get to the meat of the matter. Would that be something?
I think that would be, from my perspective, that would be helpful. Everybody understand what that means is Mr. Cuck would make certain representations to the board. He will ask his clients to verify that those are accurate representations. And we still can ask questions, I suppose, to the extent that there are questions relating to that, to those. Does the board have any objection to doing it that way?
Not at all.
Okay.
But could I ask?
Yes, so we're going to get to that in just a second. Jana and to the other members of the public, do you have any objections to that happening? Okay, so for the record, all 3 of the individuals in standing have indicated that they have no objection to the offer of proof. So before we do that, I know there was a couple of questions that the board members had, I believe, of, was it Ms. Bayshore? So we'd just like to recall Ms. Bayshore just for a few moments so we can ask a couple of questions. So go ahead, Ms.
Ms. Bayshore, the people who, or the house right next to you, the one with the red brick, I guess, and the drawing, if that would be the west side, east side? Right. Is that owned by, the people occupied, are they the owners of that house?
The Herbines, yes,
Okay, everybody, and do you know them?
yes.
Okay, and have they complained about any of this? About what you've done?
Not to me directly, no. We had some conversations around some landscaping work and the clarification of the property line, but they have not complained directly to me.
Do you know, have they complained to others?
The clarification, Mr. Becker, is we don't know if they complained to the borough or not. So that's the only hesitation in your answer.
I thought it was a good question, it was really.
It was a very good question.
It was a very good answer, considering that it was very specific to what I asked. And I have a question to you guys. The carport, do you know, as of today, whether that carport was built in accordance with the specifications for the borough of Wyomissing for garages or carports?
Yes, has,
All right, it hasn't been inspected?
has not been inspected, because we didn't get the permit, because we did not.
But Mr.
Have
Ullman,
you looked at it?
Well, I haven't passed it while doing the inspection, the initial investigation for the notices violation. It is under 1,000 square feet, so would not require a building permit and is exempt from UCC requirements. So the only governing regulatory document would be the zoning ordinance in this situation.
But to clarify, that structure is part of the building coverage of the
It would qualify as building coverage under the zoning ordinance, yes.
Which is part of what the relief is being requested. From the current, it's right around 27%.
based on the calculation Mr. Hope prepared, is 27.2%. The increase of the 516 square feet in our estimation, 540 square feet, I think in his estimation, would increase the building coverage, and this is part of my offer of proof, to a calculation of about 44%. The argument and the offer of proof I would make to this board is that, based on Gus's interpretation and what he thought he was seeing out there, the building coverage we know is not actual paving coverage. But what he expected or was thinking is that the coverage, most of the building of the deck and of the carport exists over previously existing paving coverage. So in our argument to the board, it would be dimensional relief. And the request would be that, based on the fact that the lot is 30,049 square feet, 3,049 square feet, we were already maxed out, and it was a previously existing non-conforming lot with the house. So the addition of the buildings over top of the paving, we're requesting dimensional relief for, because the cost to cure would be exceptional. And that's the focus of the dimensional request on the building coverage. If you start to slide over to the yard, the side yard is the side that Mr. Ulmer was talking about. Mr. Ulmer was talking about on the side.
Somebody agrees that we jumped in.
Everybody, it's in my mind already from earlier from Mr. Rothenberg, so I apologize. I'm thinking Mr. Ulmer. So with respect to the eastern property line, the side yard setback that was identified by the code enforcement officer was 5 feet 8 inches, which was already non-conforming with respect to a 15-foot side yard setback required by this particular R1 district. Again, this is a 3,049 square foot property. There isn't much room left. The unique and physical characteristic of the size of that lot would be something that I would ask you to consider. Gus's testimony is that the staircase was already 2 feet from the side yard with a 30-inch encroachment beyond, which arguably went over the property line into the next door property.
That's the bench.
That's the bench, Mr. Becker. So my argument to the board is we removed the bench, now making us more conforming at the 2-foot setback line, which is already pre-existing non-conformity. Different from what Mr. Hogue identified as the edge of the building, because I don't know that he knew the staircase was there previously. You'd have to ask him that question, but that was our position and that was our argument. As you start to work your way to the alley, to the south, the setback, there's 2 issues with section 404. One is the side yard setback as it relates to the carport, and the second is with respect to 602.1. For your purposes, they're the same thing, right? They both require a 15-foot side yard setback. 404 and 602.1, when you take a look at them, my argument to this board is this is now a de minimis side yard setback, because we're arguing that the 2-foot side yard setback with the house is already more of a setback issue than as you move
So
back.
you're speaking to the setback as it relates to the carport.
To the carport, exactly.
So there was not a carport there before?
There was not a carport there before.
There is now a carport there.
There is now a carport.
And the setback is still 15 feet in that area of the spot as well.
It is.
And it's now going to be with the carport, the setback is now 5 feet, looking at exhibit A5, is that
Correct.
correct? And your argument is that because it's a 2-foot setback, which was pre-existing for the
The house.
prior stairs, not the house is 5 feet.
And this is
setback.
stairs, correct.
But the stairs was 2 feet, or 2 feet?
2 feet,
Currently
currently
and previously?
and previously.
You're saying that because of that, there's only a 3-foot difference in setback from the other location on the lot.
My argument to the board would be that would be de minimis and dimensional in nature, and that would be the position with respect to the coverage issues and then with respect to the setback issues.
Okay, so let me ask a couple of just quick questions.
Please.
First of all, so Gus, based upon the information that was provided to us, do you believe the information that Mr. Cuck just provided was accurate?
Yes.
Okay, to you also, Ms. Bayshore, do you believe that information was accurate? You adopt that as your testimony for both of you?
Yes.
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 Yes, okay. I think now we just need to hear a little bit, I think Ms. Barnett may have some questions based upon our, okay, go ahead, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Robbins.
One question beforehand. You just took 5 minutes telling us what Gus supposed and what he thought. All of that would have not been necessary had he gotten a permit, because these guys would have told him exactly what has to be done. So the fact remains that all of this was done without a permit, and we can't overlook that. Okay, go ahead.
All right, so I believe, does anybody else have any questions from the board for these witnesses? Mr. Cuck, is there anything further that you believe that we should, by offer of proof, that you believe is relevant that we should be considering?
We would just move the admission of our exhibits.
And I just so that I'm clear then too, just for the record, I think we've talked about some of your or most of your photographs, but let me just run through them very quickly. I think we talked about the photographs. So the lower one on 3, so it's A43, is that right? A43, that just shows from the alley looking out at the carport, and then from there you can essentially get an idea of what that encroachment looks like. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay, A4 is, A44 is just showing, looking back into the alley. And we're standing under the carport in that top picture, is that correct?
Correct.
And the bottom picture is just looking down the alley, you can see the edge of the carport.
Yes.
A45 is, the top one is from the deck looking to the west,
Correct.
and you can see the neighboring property with a vehicle and a small garage
Yes.
type structure. And then the next one is from the deck looking down onto the carport and the property to the west.
East.
I'm sorry, east, yes,
Correct.
east. Okay, A46 is a picture of the alley looking across the alley at the properties at the opposite side of the alley.
Yes.
Or the bottom one, and the top one, you can see the same garage to get an idea. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it just shows those two that are built to the property line, over the property line, I guess.
And the same thing for A47 is looking down the alley both directions.
As you approach, I think that's the same direction.
Oh, it is?
Mr. Becker, yeah, it's just closer to
Looking at
Miss Bay Shores, that's all. As you come in off of.
Where is Ms. Bayshores in relationship?
Down to where that telephone pole is on the left,
I see.
in the picture on the right.
So kind of at the location of those garbage cans that are there?
Yeah, those are the garbage cans that are in the picture, A44. Yeah, this is as you approach.
Okay, so if I'm looking at A46, that's the garbage cans
Yep.
on the top picture. And in front, so coming to the, moving closer to the bottom of that picture, moving to the bottom of the picture, there's a concrete, white concrete driveway. Is that driveway Ms. Bayshore's driveway?
Which one, I'm sorry?
A46.
A46,
top picture.
the top picture, the white, no, that's Mr. Frymoyer's next door.
Okay, I see. And then the grass strip goes.
Between Mr. Frymoyer and Miss Bay Shore.
Got it. Understood, okay. All right. Is there anything further that you would like to explain about any of those photographs?
The point of those pictures, Gus, was to show that a significant number of structures in the immediate neighborhood are basically right up to the alley. Is that
Up to the alley, up to the property line, yes.
Okay. All right, I know that Ms. Barnett had some questions, I believe that she wanted to ask. So Ms. Barnett, if you would care to ask your questions now of Mr. Dennis.
I think counsel's representation is satisfied my curiosity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Frymoyer, do you have any questions?
For Gus, yes. Roughly how long did this entire construction project take? From first call to finish the outside, inside the outside?
Probably 3 months, 4 months.
Okay. And at no time did you consider calling someone at the borough to?
I did. It's just, like I said, it just slipped through the cracks. It wasn't, we started with no permits and went to a project that needed permits. I have no excuse. There's no, I mean, it's completely my fault. I don't want Ms. Bay Shore to be punished for what I did. So, yes, that was all intents to get the permits. So I've never done anything without permits before. This is a one-off. This was slipped through the cracks. Nothing else I can say.
Mr. Fryer?
Thank you.
Anything more?
Nope.
Ms. Frymoyer, do you have anything? Questions?
I'd just like to say I have empathy for Christine, and I can't imagine going through it, but I'm concerned about the precedent this would set.
Okay, you're gonna have a minute, you're gonna have an opportunity in a minute to make some statements. Do you have any questions?
Oh, no.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. Mr. Cook, do you have anything further that you would like to present this afternoon?
Just a brief closing, Mr. Becker, which I assume the
We'll
board
let
may
you-
think.
And we'll let you do that after we have, because right now I want to have you rest.
We
move
rest
for
move
admissions to your exhibits. Any objections from the residents for the exhibits? Ms. Barnett?
No.
Mr. Frymoyer?
No.
Ms. Frymoyer? No?
No.
Okay. Thank you. The exhibits will be admitted. Now, let's go to the residents. Ms. Barnett, do you have any exhibits or testimony that you would like to present?
I do not.
Okay. Mr. Frymore, do you have any exhibits or testimony that you would like to present?
Again, I just would like to say I'm very sympathetic, but this is why we have zoning. So,
Anything further?
No.
Thank you. Ms. Frymore, do you have anything that you would like to present?
Well, I'm sympathetic also, but I'd hate to see a precedent set for this, and I'd like to remind the board, I had a neighbor last year on the 1200 block of Delaware Avenue who had to move a shed because he did not get a permit, and you required him to get rid of the shed.
Anything further, Ms. Frymore? Anything further?
No.
Okay, thank you very much. At this point, Mr. Cock, I believe you said that you would like to make a closing statement to the board.
Members of the board, Mr. Becker, I would just like to point out, obviously, we wanted to go through the process of explaining to you what happened and why it happened. Mrs. Bayshore obviously didn't do it, and I understand that that's no excuse, but under the circumstances, we're respectfully requesting dimensional and de minimis variances, in which case we will gladly pay the penalty if there's a penalty for, the permits are already applied for, we'll go through the process of doing whatever needs to be done to correct it. I mean, it's just that simple. And I speak with my clients' absolute acquiescence to that.
You know, I failed to do one thing, and I'm going to hold this thought for a moment. We didn't ask Mr. Hogue if there's anything further he would like to add for clarification for this matter. And I'll let you all have the opportunity to talk to Mr. Hogue, but I want to make sure that we don't miss him. Is there anything further that you would like to add to this, Jeff?
No, sir.
That makes it easy.
Is it fair to ask Mr. Hogue if he just, do you agree with what I stated as far as the arguments go with side yards and cover this?
I'd have to do a deeper review, but from a very superficial standpoint, I don't have any major disagreements now.
Disagreements with what issues?
Well, with specific to the side yard setbacks, I wasn't given information regarding the existing deck or this bench, so with Mr. Cox's statements regarding de minimis, there's certainly arguments to be made there, but like I said, I'd have to do a deeper review.
Let me ask just a couple of follow-up questions so I understand. And again, I'll give everybody the opportunity to talk to Mr. Hogue as well. And so, what is the process for them next if relief were to be granted? Do they have to come in and pull the permits?
They've already pulled the permits, yeah, so we would, upon.
They applied for them?
Yeah, excuse me, yeah, they have applied for the permits, yes.
Is there some additional penalty that's associated with that application process?
Per the borough fee schedule, we could double the permit fees of the permits once approved.
And if in order to approve those permits, do you have to go back out and do a full inspection?
We will perform, we'll be zoning for the carport, but for the deck, we would need to do footing inspections, a frame inspection, and a final inspection.
And that may require them to take pieces apart and down in order to do that inspection and complete it properly?
Potentially, we would probably require them to dig down alongside some of the footers to verify depth and size of the footers. But the framing and final inspections, generally looking at this deck, it looks like it's high enough that we could get underneath that pretty easily and inspect everything we need to from a framing standpoint.
And then as far as just so I'm clear in understanding, as far as the carport is concerned, I think you made a comment a moment ago, I just want to make sure I got that correct, that there's no permit that's required for the carport for UCC purposes?
Correct, yep, because the carport is under 1,000 square feet, it is exempt from uniform construction code requirements.
There's no permit required for building permits as well?
That would be what a building permit is, yes.
Okay. And there's no, but there is a permit required for zoning?
Correct.
That's the zoning permit, which would determine whether it exceeded the coverages and so forth.
That's correct.
Setbacks and so forth, right? Okay. Mr. Cuck, do you have any further questions as a result of those questions?
No questions, Mr.
Board
Becker.
members, do you have any further questions for Mr. Hogue? Any members of the resident, do you have any further questions for?
Would there have been a permit required to pour the slab to rip or replace
Which slab are you referring to?
the
Drive?
carport driveway?
Yeah, that would be, replacing the driveway, the concrete driveway with an asphalt driveway would require a permit as well, yes.
Good question. And does that permit require then an inspection as well?
That would be, again, a final zoning inspection.
So it's just a zoning permit?
Yep, for all zoning permits, we just do one inspection once the project is complete to verify that it complies with the plot plan that was provided.
But there wouldn't be, there's no core drillings or things of that nature for the driveway? There's no permits, no construction or building permits for the driveway?
Correct.
It's just a zoning permit?
Correct.
Okay. Is there any further questions from anybody?
No questions.
Residents? I see no questions across the board. No more questions? Board members, any further questions?
No, I think
Does
we're all
anybody,
good.
does anybody feel compelled to make any further statements at this point in time?
No, thank you for your time.
Good, thank you guys very much. If not, then we're gonna go into an executive session. We'll ask you guys to excuse us.
Is it your pleasure we wait or should we leave?
I think we're gonna try. I mean, we're gonna try to get
I
it.
just didn't know if we should be staying.
No,
We'll send up some smoke.
So- If you go outside,
Motion.
Yeah, this is gonna be a little bit more complicated, so I'm gonna ask our solicitor to repeat what I'm saying, correct me if I go wrong. The request for a variance from section by Christine Bayshore, I move that the request of a variance by Christine Bayshore from section 404 and section 602.1.8 be granted in part and denied in part. Granted in terms of section 404 from the steps, the variance for the steps, because we don't believe that it was necessary for the steps. Grant the variance for the increase of coverage as a result of the deck.
Building coverage.
Building coverage, yes. Deny the request for a variance from section 602.1A, building setback for the carport, and deny the increased coverage from section 602.1A for the carport.
Subject to.
subject to,
in terms of.
they're essentially our standard conditions, they're as follows.
By our solicitor.
So subject to those standard conditions, and they're basically as follows. The applicant is bound by all testimony and exhibits that have been presented at today's hearing. Applicant will comply with all the requirements of the borough as you move forward, which includes making sure that you're pulling the necessary permits, paying the appropriate fees, and doing the required inspections for the deck that would remain. That you'll use and develop the property in compliance with all federal, state laws, rules, regulations moving forward. I think I've said this, but I'll repeat it, to pull all necessary permits and approvals as maybe, and get all necessary approvals that may be needed as you move forward to keep the deck in place. That you are going to be required, you can't alter or otherwise expand the property without obtaining relief in the future. Also, I believe, would be required to remove that carport. That would be at the discretion of the zoning and code officers to remove that so that it's either in compliance or that it's complete. Actually, it's going to be completely removed because of the size. And that you'll have to implement all that work within 1 year of the date of this decision. That'll be it.
All in favor to the motion as read?
Aye.
Aye. Motion is carried.
Thank you for your time.